This is Section 7, Application Architecture. This is Video 1, Clean Architecture Part 1. In this video, we're going to look at the basics of a clean-inspired architecture and how to do dependency injection in Go. In this video and the next, we're going to be looking at how to organize code within one microservice repo. When working with Go, since it's so flexible, it's a common concern how to organize our code. The question would be, how do we organize our code in an application so that it's clear, extensible, and testable? Throughout the course so far, we have done lots of code, but our code wasn't very tidy or organized. The reason for this is that we were focused on a lot of topics, and also because writing clear and maintainable code usually takes a little longer than just prototyping. Another thing, this is a warning. Outside of these two videos and the repo for those, we will not be following the guidelines of these two videos in future videos. Again, because we will be focusing on other topics and we'll just prototype what we need to work on. Writing well-organized code takes longer than quickly prototyping something. Use this video if you need as a reference. In recent years, and for good reason, clean architecture has gained a lot of popularity. Clean architecture is a concept introduced by Robert C. Martin, also known as Uncle Bob, as a solution for writing clear, maintainable, testable, and easily repurposed code for complex applications. The most important idea with clean architecture is separating your business logic and rules from implementation detail, so that if in the future we need to repurpose our application, maybe change from a REST application to a gRPC one, we can do so easily. Another important idea is the ability to easily change implementation details, like maybe using a different data store easily. We will not be looking at all of the details of clean architecture. There are some links in the README of the video you should really look at. But what we will be doing is try to work through a practical implementation of a simplified architecture inspired by the clean architecture. If you look at how Robert C. Martin explains the clean architecture, we'll see that it's an architecture with many layers. We're going to use the following graph as an example of how we could be doing something like the clean architecture for a Go web service. We need to go from the insides to the outsides. This is a quick explanation. We will go through all of these elements on their own later. First, entities have enterprise-wide reasons rule. Use cases will have the logic that is specific to this application. And interfaces, which will be the green part, has adapters that comment data from what is needed by the use cases, for example, from web data in the entry points, or maybe the repositories like DBs. And then in the outer layer, we will have the infrastructure code. For example, the code that is actually used by the database, or the actual logic for REST handling or HTTP handlers. This is how we could do it, but we're going to do a simpler version, and I'm going to explain why as we continue through the video. The reason is a couple of notes on abstraction. Code that is well abstracted is easy to reuse. However, code that is too abstracted is very hard to maintain. You know, as you have more abstraction, there's more that you actually have to maintain when you have to do changes that maybe cross layers. So it's really not useful to have more layers that you actually need. So the architecture we're going to be using is the following. We're not going to use DBs. We're not going to abstract the databases. The reason we're not going to abstract the databases is because when switching from a repository generally in a web service, you may choose to go from an SQL database to a NoSQL database, or maybe to a REST endpoint. Maybe instead of calling database, you're now calling another service. So if you're in any of these cases, you won't be able to just switch databases and keep the other code. You will need to rewrite the whole code. So we won't be using the DBs. The other thing we're not going to be using is entry points. There's an example on GoKit. GoKit actually uses endpoints and quite good entry points and quite good. You can see that there, and after you finish these videos, when you look at how code is organized in GoKit, you will see that they use entry points. So you'll see an example of how to use them. The reason we're not using entry points is generally if you will go from a REST service to a gRPC service, you generally have to rewrite the whole thing because it is not really something that can easily be switched. So there is no point in having another layer that you actually have to rewrite if you ever change the other layer. So we're keeping it simple. And well, let's look at the code we have. The application I'm going to be using is just a cleaned up version of the user's API with cache that we saw on section 5. First things first, this should of course reside in its own repo. It's not practical for us to create a new repo for every video of the course, so we have multiple apps that on the course repo, and inside the some videos we may have various services, but you should generally have one service per repo. Another good practice is to separate your code in an API folder and a scripts folder. If you see here, we have a source folder, and then we have API, where is the actual API, and then we have the scripts. In the future, you may find out you need a data or a conf folder. So it's good to have this separated and not just have the API directly on the root. Well, we're going to be looking at entities now. Entities encapsulate enterprise-wide business rule. What does this mean? Well, think about it this way. If I were to do an application that also has to do with users, I should be able to reuse the user entity. Now, this should be taken with a grain of salt because there is something called the distributed monolith anti-pattern, which we'll discuss on another video. But it's still a common practice, and depending on how big your system is, sometimes it is common to do something like having a specific repo for core application call with a name like name of organization / common or similar, and import things like entities and use cases from there. So let's look at our entity. So we have a user entity in the folder entities from our API. The user has a variety of different fields, and there's also a method it has, which is getAccountType, which basically returns the value of an enum, which is an int, but we use it as an enum, based on the value of the account field. So that's it. The thing is, we can test it independently. In this case, the only thing we're going to be testing is the getAccountType method, but we can test it independently. And as we see, user doesn't know absolutely anything about anything other else than itself. It could know about other entities, but never about use cases or any of the other elements. On an entity, we could also have other things like validation rules, etc. The only important thing to remember is that it's business logic that should be common to all applications that deal with users. It's enterprise-wide business logic. Then we have use cases. Use cases are application-specific business rules. The logic for it is specific to this application, though it is not uncommon to sometimes reuse certain use cases. The important thing here is that the only things a use case may know, it's of entities. It might know of entities. I might know about repositories, but not by the concrete implementations, but by actually what the repository interfaces. So let's look at the code. So we have two use cases, get user and update user. We're going to be looking at get user. The get user use case has a variety of things that we will be looking later, but it has an interface, get user interface, and it has two repositories. It has access, the actual implementation of the get user interface has two repositories, the user cache repository and the users repository. Then it has the logic. It basically looks into the cache. If it's not in the cache, it returns. It looks for it in the main repo, and then returns it, and also sets the cache. That's very basic. We've seen it before. But the thing is, this is important thing. It knows about repositories, but it doesn't know about concrete in implementation of repositories. The repository knows is actually an interface. So on the repository, when we look at repository, we'll look in more detail later. For example, the MySQL user repository, which is the concrete implementation of the user's repository. Here we have the interface and we have the concrete implementation. This is how we return a new concrete implementation, and these are the methods of the implementation of the methods of the interface. So as we saw, the get user use case knows about the interface. Why are we doing this? The reason we're doing this is that then we can test the get user implementation, on its own, without actually needing to use a concrete implementation of the repository. For example, if we go to get user use case test, you will see that we are creating a get user implementation. And for cache repo, we're going to be presenting a mock user cache repository. And from repo, we're going to be presenting a mock users repository. That mock user repository and etc. is here. It's here. For example, we have the mock users repository that implements all of the functions of the user repository. And so we can test independently of having to use an actual concrete MySQL based repository. So what this is what we would call a form of dependency injection. Basically, on the test, we are injecting the dependencies that we need. In this case, it will be a mock version. But if we look at main, where we are actually creating the MySQL user repository, which is the actual concrete implementation. And here we are passing all the get to handlers, but here is the code that we're looking at the get user case. The repo receives the interface, but in this case, it's going to receive the concrete MySQL user repository. While on the test, we're going to pass a mock user repository. This is how we do something like dependency injection. It's actually dependency injection because we are injecting the dependency, and we're injecting a different one when we are on live than when we're using on test. Generally, in other type of languages, dependency injection is handled by libraries, but what they're doing below is exactly this.